But as far as the cash goes, like I said, the only thing that I can determine is that his costs were very minimal. Back in those days, there were no taxes. Remember, he had his own water. The electricity that he needed, he actually he provided that for himself. So really, and a lot of people helped Ed out, like ladies would bake him pies or take him food, and so a lot of the people there helped him. But as far as that actual cash goes, I've just got to think that, over those periods of time, he actually saved it from the utility company that he received stocks from, or and he was very miserly. All his utilities, all his tools, he handmade everything. He actually bought nothing.
Might he have had an inheritance?
Well, no. When he came here, he told the Mosers, he said, "I'm flat broke. I have nothing." He started out with nothing. Now, I have learned later on that, I was thinking when I was first researching the story that he lost total contact with his family, but there's stories now that he did write back and forth to them. But as far as I know, they never sent him a dime.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about this health chair. Tell us.
The health chair is something a lady emailed me after the last show, the show that we did before in March of 2004, and she said, as a little girl, she said, my mother was not really dating Ed, but she said my mother was a teacher. She was very intelligent, and she said Ed really liked her. And she said, now, in these days, Ed was working in the sun. He had a good tan. He'd gotten his health back. And she said, he was kind of a muscular little guy there. And she said, my mother was quite attracted to him. And she said, we'd go by the castle, and they'd kind of flirt back and forth and talk about schools, because Ed loved children. And she said, when he was giving me a tour of the castle, now, the health chair, George, as we were studying this thing, it's not really different than any other chairs, Remember, there's 25 one-ton rocking chairs inside Coral Castle. They all rock on the center of their gravity. They don't have rocker arms. They're just kind of cut in a concave position. And she said Ed would take her to this chair. She was probably 6, 7 years old, and he told her, he said, now sit in this chair here, and you'll have good health forever. Now, she said, I would sit in the chair for a while, and she said, but as a young child, of course, I was restless, and I wanted to play on the other chairs in the castle there. And Ed told other people every now and then. Now, he didn't really put the health chair on his tour. He didn't really include it. The health chair was behind and to the left of the mother-in-law chair. If you remember, that was the one he said he created it to be the most uncomfortable chair in the castle in case his mother-in-law, visited, that she would hate the chair and take the hint and leave.
Well, now, he didn't have a mother-in-law.
Had a mother-in-law. Well, a supposed mother-in-law in the future if she came.
All right.
So the health chair, I would love to find out more about that. We're wondering, George, if it's not at one of those points in the castle there where the energy level would have been on the grid, and maybe it would have been higher because, they've proven now that they actually have a magnet machine that you can get into that's a pulsating magnetic field that actually repels, arthritis and all these type of things. So the only thing we can figure is that chair is sitting in a spot on one of those, what we call a sweet spot.
Let me ask you this. Did anybody ever try to duplicate this magnetic machine that he had up there?
Well, over the years, there's several backyard inventors, and I get emails from a lot of guys all the time that are trying, and several people have gotten close, but they've never really, I think there was a company that had to move offshore near one of the, I want to say the Canary Islands, because they were kind of harassed out of this country, so they set it up down there, and they are still making trying to make models of it. They're the same idea, but it's very difficult. And as far as I know, they do not have an exact working model of his machine, although they're trying.
Well, I'm always wondering if somebody's got the technology somewhere, especially if, like he said, it could propel rockets.
Yeah, and George, when you think about it, that's with the magnets running the machine, and it's always producing as much as it consumes. In fact, the idea comes from a battery, because I think water, if you remember, water had to be present. When he found the water there, water sort of acts as a catalyst like a battery does in our car. So this machine is very plausible. And one thing I can't understand, George, is we have something here in our country that there's nothing like it. The man who discovered the secrets of the pyramids, the Mayans, all of these cultures, Stonehenge, not only does he figure that out and proves it, and Ed was not a braggart, he let his stones do the talking, but here is a machine that we should be using, we should be studying, and yet today, from, say, the University of Florida Engineering Department, or I was watching a thing on History Channel where these professors went to Italy studying these different architects, from Syracuse and New York University, and I thought, why aren't these same guys, why don't they come right into our own country here, figure out what Ed's machine was, at least put the students, why not run the students from the University of Florida through these classes, your engineering students, let them study. George, in Florida, 90% of the Florida residents don't know about Coral Castle. If it wasn't for people like you and Coast, I've never been interviewed by a radio station in Florida.
You're kidding me.
No, I don't even. There's only been one magazine article and one newspaper article written in Florida about my work.
Who owns the place now?
The owners of Coral Castle are quite mysterious. It's very difficult. They really don't want to be known. From what I understand, they live in Chicago, but I don't know if they're afraid of they don't want publicity, or they're quite wealthy. And
do you know who they are?
I really don't. I had tried to find out one time, and I was told not to ask any more questions.
What would the property tax rolls say? They've got to see something.
You could probably find it out from there. It's just that I never pursued the matter because I thought, well, if they want to remain private, who am I to?
You're down that way, though, aren't you?
Pardon me?
Are you down that way?
Well, no, I'm actually 8 hours. I'm an 8-hour drive. I'm almost. That's why I have this swamp accent. I'm almost into Georgia, where I live. I'm actually.
We got to turn somebody loose on this to find out what the property tax rolls say. I mean, I'm sure it's probably in a trust or some kind of corporation, and we may never find out who it is. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. I'm really curious to see who owns it. Now, how long have they owned it?
Well, now they've actually. I can give you a little bit of history on that. When Ed died, he had one cousin named Harry Leedskalnin. He was in Chicago, and he left the castle to Harry. But Harry was sick, so he sold it to a couple in Chicago. They kept it for a couple of years, and then they sold it to the owners that own it now. Okay, now you can check with the state of Florida, the history department there, and they can tell you it's a registered. It's on the National Historical Register, so you can find out from that. Like I said, I got into a little bit of trouble with the owners there, George. If you remember,
what happened?
Well, if you remember in the first book that I sent you.
And you mean the current owners?
Yes, the current owners.
Okay.
My book is not carried in Coral Castle. For anybody who calls, you're not going to find my book in any of the chain stores. You won't find it at Coral Castle. I live in an old Florida cracker house built around 1900, and I've got it stacked to the walls with my book. I'm the only one that carries it. I don't know if I've been blacklisted at the stores or what, but nobody carries my book.
So it's not sanctioned by the Coral Castle people?
No.
Okay, why not?
Well, this is... I want to
give us the juicy stuff, Joe. What happened?
Okay, I'm going to air my dirty laundry here, George, just for you. Okay, as I was researching this story, and I remember I spent like 10 years I wasn't planning on writing a book. I was just taking notes because I was so fascinated. Well, I was down in Honduras because I was looking for the Atlantis connection. I had read a lot of stories about Casey talking about Atlantis existing off the coast of Florida at Bimini, which just fascinates me because they have actually, George, found a pyramid down there that was 400 feet out of the sand. So I'm sitting here going, oh, my God. So I'm down in Honduras. Well, I find this Mayan swastika on a pyramid down there, and it's also in Mexico. It's all over the place. Now, when I say a Mayan swastika, I mean it's not exactly like Hitler's swastika.
Well, and I want everybody to know that prior to the Nazis, the swastika was a pretty commonplace emblem, wasn't it? And logo type.
Yes, it actually meant, like the sun. It was characterizing the sun.
Right. I mean, it's got bad connotations now, but before the Nazis took it as their slogan, basically.
Right.
it was pretty predominantly used.
It
for
was all
years.
over the place. Yes, it was
for ages.
Yes, even the Mayans had it. They actually believed that the snake, when he shed his skin, he was being reborn.